Holy shit, it happened again. Another crazy week of football just happened again. I can't wait to talk about it tomorrow because I'm going to have a field day with two of our coaches because, man, they sucked. Anyways, welcome to Grizzly Talks Football. We're back at it again. Week number 4 of college football reactions. And also, we got Week 5 AP poll that came out yesterday to talk about. Man, we've had some pretty good games, like some shockers, some very good top 25 matchups, and some close calls that we need to talk about. And we're going to get straight into that. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you still haven't already, why the hell have you not subbed yet? Click the red button, just do it. What are you waiting for? Like, no one's stopping you from clicking it. And hit the like button and hit the bell so you don't miss a video. Anyways, let's get straight to it. I've been waiting to talk about this game for the past couple of days. Kansas State, what on earth happened? I thought y'all were supposed to be good. How the hell did y'all let us beat you in Provo by 30? Why? Y'all really destroyed Arizona for this? Like, what are you doing? Final score is 38-9. We get a big home win against the top 15 team that should have beat us by 20. I mean, as far as team stats go, like, they dominated us, especially in the run game. 228 yards on 43 carries. They just threw 2 interceptions and fumbled the ball. That was actually a defensive touchdown. Obviously, they had 3 turnovers. One of them was for a touchdown, and we had 0 turnovers. We played safe football, even though Jake Grizzly, I mean, he was just more of a game manager more than anything. Taking a look at the Kansas State's passers, oh boy, 15-28, 103 yards, no touchdowns and 2 picks. Oh dear. Kansas State, what happened here? Like, how is your quarterback that bad? And then, of course, like I said, Jake Grizzly, I think he's more of a game manager more than anything. He's kind of like a risk-free kind of guy, if you want to plug him in. He's like more of a Malik Willis filling in for Jordan Love, if you know what I mean, just without the kind of mobility, I guess. As for Kansas State's skill position years, oh yeah. When I say that Kansas State dominated the run game, I meant that. DJ Giddens 93 yards on 19 carries. Avery Johnson did well running the ball as well. He had 11 carries for 74 yards. Dylan Edwards had 41 yards. Like, no touchdowns at all for this Kansas State offense. Like, we held them to field goals all game. Then, of course, Jace Brown had 4 catches for 51. Kinka Johnson, 4 catches for 30. And that was it for Kansas State's receiving. Like, nothing special. Like, rushing game was great, but no touchdowns at all. And as for our offense, Sione Moa had 76 rushing yards and a touchdown. He was like our main source of running the ball the entire game. I think LJ Martin may have suffered an injury or something. That's why he had to come in. And then we had 2 touchdowns from Chase Roberts and Darius Lassiter. Obviously, the most catches anyone got was 3. That was a tie between Lassiter and Sione Moa. I don't know how to say it. Do not flame me, please. I mean, Kansas State's defense got to us like 5 times, and Brandon Mott was a pretty freakish kind of guy. Or no, sorry. No, that's tackle for loss. Yeah, there was 2 sacks on the game for Kansas State. Yeah, Brandon Mott is a legend for sacking Tretzloff for 1.5 times. Pass deflection for Fiji Payne. Austin Romaine had a good game, and yeah, the only few players that did much of anything for Kansas State's defense, like no turnovers at all. As for our defense, of course, 2 interceptions by Taggart and Tyler Batty. Who would have thought our defensive backs don't get the 2 interceptions, but one of our linebackers and one of our defensive linemen ended up getting picks. We even had a fumble return for a touchdown by Tommy Process. So that was definitely amazing. Jonathan Kumbaya and Micah Harper had pass deflections. There were also 3 forced fumbles. What's going on there, Kansas State? How are you letting us do that to you? Oh yeah, and before I forget, in the third quarter, there was a punt return for a touchdown by Parker Kingston for 90 yards. So that was another touchdown that we had on the day in a dominating performance on defense for the BYU Cougars, and offense still has left for me to desire. Now you're in Kansas State. Oh dear. Yeah, you got a lot of issues to work out for, and I can see why. So we ended up having college game day in Norman, and did that go as I expected? Number 6 Tennessee took on 15th ranked Oklahoma. Tennessee came out on top by 10. Well, I was wrong. Tennessee still is here, and they are still legit. But I do have a question for the Sooners. What in the hell happened on offense? Like, y'all looked so bad on offense. Like, it's not even funny. Like, why? Why, Venables? Why? Don't believe me? Look at the damn rushing yards. 36? Like, Tennessee ate your lunch all game. It was a turnover fest. Tennessee had more penalties than y'all, but they dominated on offense because they actually had a run game. Unlike you, Sooners. What happened here? I will say, Nico Iamaleava, he didn't look terrible. I mean, he had 200 yards, a touchdown, 13-21. Michael Hawkins actually looked decent in that game as well, with 132 yards and a touchdown on 11 of 18. But man, Jackson Arnold, you struggled, and no wonder you got benched or injured or whichever it was. I don't think I was injured. I think you just got benched because you played so badly. 7 of 16, 54 yards and a pick. Really? Tennessee, of course, got it done on the run game. Dylan Sampson, 92 yards on 24 carries and a touchdown. Deshaun Bishop had 65 rushing yards. And Brew McCoy with 4 catches, 92 yards. And then Dante Thornton, 2 catches, 73 yards and a touchdown. That was just the main source of offense between Sampson, Bishop, McCoy, and Thornton all game for the Vols. Then, of course, like I said before, rushing game, terrible. The only real highlight for the Sooners offense was Jaquez Petaway with 3 catches and 79 yards, and Deion Burks and Bauer Sharp having 4 catches each for 30 yards. And yeah, just a rough day for the Sooners. No touchdowns whatsoever. I mean, of course, Oklahoma had field goals all game. They turned it to the Commanders playing the Giants, except the Giants actually won that game. I'm just kidding. No. That was the Commanders. Commanders won that game. But Jermon McCoy had the only interception of the game. And there was basically it. I mean, 2 players had a sack, Tyre West and Jackson Moy. 2 fumble recoveries with 2 toss fumbles from Josh Josephs. I can't even talk. 4 pass deflections by McCoy, Turrentine, Arian Carter, and Will Brooks. Tennessee just had Oklahoma's number, and it really showed on both sides of the ball. And as for Oklahoma's defense, I mean, Robert Spears-Jennings had a good game. A sack and a forced fumble. There were 2 fumble recoveries. That was the only turnovers of the game for Tennessee. You also had Ethan Downs, Grayson Halton recovering those balls for the turnover. Recovering the fumbles, should I say. And then Connie Walker and Eli Bowen with pass deflections. Like, defense did all they could, but they just got fatigued out there because the offense couldn't do jack on the field. And they did not show up for this game at all. And next, we had a Big Ten showdown between the 11th ranked USC Trojans taking on the Michigan Wolverines, ranked number 18 in the country, after a pretty close game with Arkansas State and losing to Texas in blowout fashion in Ann Arbor. This was a must-win game for Michigan because, man, they were embarrassed and home against Texas and then almost lost to Arkansas State. Like, this team definitely fell off after Harbaugh left. As for USC, they kind of came back down to earth. I was really thinking that they were going to ride high and they would actually win this game. But, yeah, it was in the big house. I probably should have picked Wolverines about this like I did with Oklahoma. Except Oklahoma lost to Tennessee. And Michigan ended up winning this game in a thriller. I mean, offensively, And defensively, this game was very competitive, except Michigan had the rushing game of legend and nothing for passing yards. What? Oh my gosh. I didn't even notice this, but Miller Moss balled out 51 total pass attempts for him. Kyron Ware-Hudson had a pass attempt that failed as well. 28-51, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. He's going to be a future star in the college football. I can already tell. And then Alex Orji only attempted 12 passes. Oh, goodness. And he threw for 32 yards. I guess he didn't commit a turnover. It doesn't really show me which players fumbled the ball or anything. So, yeah, Alex Orji, not terrible, but you need to throw for more yards than 32. You barely won this one because of your rushing game. Let me say that. I mean, as it stands, USC actually had one great player on the rushing game, and that was Jaquavius Marks with 100 rushing yards and 13 carries. And then Zachary Branch, 6 catches, 98 yards. And then 3 touchdowns by Jacoby Lane with 450 and a tud. Jay Fair, 342 and a tutty, and 219 and a tud for Deuce Robinson. And Cologne Mullings, 17 carries, 159 yards, and 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown. Damn. And then Donovan Edwards carried the ball 14 times, got 74 yards, and also got a touchdown. Of course, no receiving game. And Alex Orji ran the ball more times than he threw the ball. This really shows why the running backs, or the running room and the offensive line is, I guess it's pretty solid for Michigan right now. And USC's defense only got to him twice. I mean, Eric Gentry had a pretty good game. He had a forced fumble recovery. So that's Jaquavius Marks? Interesting. Eric Gentry had the best game on defense with 12 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and a sack. Mason Cobb also had 1.5 tackles for loss. 2 pass deflections were by Akili Arnold and Kamari Ramsey. USC, their defense bended the best they could, and they just eventually broke. And then as for Michigan's defense, Mason Graham had a sack. Jair Hill had a solid game. So did Zeke Berry, Hossman, Quentin Johnson. There were a ton of pass deflections in this game for Michigan. Josiah Stewart had 2 sacks and a forced fumble, 3 tackles for loss. He had a really good game. Kenneth Grant had a pass deflection and a fumble recovery. And there was also Will Johnson returning an interception for a touchdown. That was one of the other touchdowns that they got their way. They kind of look like the Chicago Bears, but actually with an offense, which is basically rushing. And their rushing game and their good defense ended up helping Michigan win this game at home. You know I had to talk about this one. A little Big 12 showdown between 2 of the supposed favorites in the entire conference. Number 12, Utah, traveling to Stillwater to play the Oklahoma State Cowboys, ranked 14th at the time. I will say this was a close game, even though it was kind of a little disappointing with the score, but it was still a pretty good game nonetheless. But let me tell you something, Oklahoma State. You guys lost to Isaac Wilson. Zach Wilson's, guess what, younger brother. Are you freaking serious? I mean, Utah dominated on offense. The rushing stats? Yeah, Ollie Gordon, what is this? 15 carries total for the entire team of Oklahoma State, 48 yards. This was a turnover-filled game. And there were so many chances for Oklahoma State to get back in it, but they just did not. And Utah took advantage. I mean, Isaac Wilson didn't play that great, but he didn't play that bad either. 200 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks. Alan Bowman had a pretty good game except for his 2 interceptions. 200 yards, 16 of 33, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. Garrett Rangel had some snaps at quarterback as well, but it just wasn't enough for Oklahoma State to even come back. I mean, offensively for Utah, Micah Bernard, 25 carries and 182 yards. God damn. And then Brant Queeth had a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown on 4 catches, 74 yards. And Dorian Singer had 7 catches for 95 yards, which is really impressive. As to him being the reason why they were able to move down the field is set up Queeth for those 2 touchdowns on offense. I mean, like, Alan Bowman was doing well. I mean, he threw touchdowns to Brendan Presley, who had 4 for 47, and Rashad Owens, who had 3 for 42. I think that was in the fourth quarter, and they just didn't have enough. Like, Ollie Gordon had 3.8 yards a carry the entire game. Like, Ollie Gordon, you were considered for a Heisman, and this is how you play? Like, get out of here with that Heisman talk. Are you serious? Defensively for Utah, I think they only had one sack from Van Villinger. And then the 2 picks were by Alakai Gilman, Elijah Davis. 3 pass deflections by Smith Snowden, though. And then there was also Sione Fotu and Keanu Tanavasa. Yeah, Utah just held on in the end. It wasn't pretty, but they'll take the win regardless, and they're still undefeated. Impressive games on Oklahoma State's defense from Trey Rucker, who had 14 tackles and 2 interceptions. Obi Ezigbo had 10 tackles and 1.5 tackles for loss. Kendall Daniels even had 7 tackles and a sack. Xavier Ross had a sack. There were some pass deflections, mostly 6. And then 2 forced fumbles by Nicholas Martin and Cam Smith. And Nicholas Martin even picked one up for a turnover as well. Oklahoma State's defense looking solid. Utah's defense looking solid. It was just offense couldn't do anything for Oklahoma State, and Utah just pulled out the win. You know I had to talk about this game. Missouri hangs on to beat Vanderbilt and remain undefeated in double overtime. Actually, 30-27, and the game was in double overtime. Vanderbilt kicker missed a field goal that ended the game for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt put up a really good fight against the top 10 team, and they came so close to beating them. Missouri Tigers, what happened here, Missouri? Like, are y'all actually dead serious right now? This is not what a top team is supposed to do. They're not supposed to keep it close against a team at home. Especially a team like Vanderbilt, who has been the laughingstock of the FCC for like the past almost decade. Like, come on, Missouri, you can't do that. I mean, what else can I say except it was a very clean game of football. Like, no turnovers happened. Missouri dominated on both sides of the ball. Well, they had the edge in both of them, but Vanderbilt had a really good fight in there. Brady Cook, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 23-37, and then Diego Pavia, I'm starting to become a believer in him. Like, he could turn this around. 14-23 for 178 yards and 2 touchdowns. Quarterbacks played pretty nicely. Vanderbilt's rushing, I mean, it wasn't that bad either. Diego Pavia had 84 rushing yards, so he is a dual threat. Yeah, that's good to know. Cedric Alexander, 52 yards. I mean, 4.7 and 4.9 yards per carry isn't that bad. And then A.J. Newberry having a touchdown. Joseph McVay having a 65-yard touchdown. Eli Stowers having 7 catches, 57 yards. And Gabe Fisher having the other touchdown for Vanderbilt's offense. And then Missouri, Nate Noel. Oh, dear. 8.3 yards a carry. 24 carries, almost 200 yards. It was just a shock that he didn't get a touchdown at all in the game. That went to Marcus Carroll for rushing. And then Luther Burden again becoming an elite receiver, one of the best in the SEC, maybe the entire nation, with 6 catches, 76 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then Theo Weiss with 5 catches for 55 yards for that receiving core. As far as Vanderbilt's defense, what a game from Brian Longwell, Langston Patterson, Anton Fontenot, Capers, Height. Like, they had some solid games. I mean, Longwell had a sack. Fontenot had a sack. There was another sack by Corday Sidnor. Then there were 4 pass deflections. Of course, no turnovers. Like, Vanderbilt's defense didn't do terrible, but couldn't really do anything. Neither could Missouri's defense. And you would think that Missouri's defense would actually be able to stop these guys, but no. Like, the only guy really to note here is Marvin Burks, and then Chris McClellan with 2.5 tackles for loss, 5 pass deflections, and they only got to Diego Pavia 1 time, and that was Chuck Higgs who had the only sack in the game. It was an offensive shootout, but Missouri was able to pull it out because Vanderbilt's kicker couldn't make a field goal to send the game to a 3rd overtime. Just like 2013 when Mizzou tried to kick a game-time field goal against South Carolina when they were number 5 team in the nation, and it hit the post, to hit the upright. Vanderbilt hung in there with Missouri. Missouri has a lot to talk about for their upcoming game. I really don't know what it is. I didn't really fact check which game that would be, but Missouri needs to get it together regardless. So, in summary of all the other ranked matchups, I think every ranked team looked solid when they played an unranked team, except Texas A&M. That just shows that Bowling Green is actually elite. Oh boy. Falcons, you might be a MAC contender this year. Who knows? Like, seriously, who knows? But anyways, the final game I want to talk about is this game right here between Baylor and Colorado in Boulder. Oh boy. Baylor, you had the game in the bag and you allowed a Hail Mary pass from Shedeur Sanders to, I believe that receiver's name was Wester. It was number 10, whichever name it was like Hester, Wester, whichever it was. You let them get a touchdown to tie the game up, and then you ultimately lose in overtime. You had the game won. You pulled in Atlanta. You should be ashamed. Yeah, so it was Wester who did that. Passing game was pretty straightforward for Colorado. I mean, Shedeur Sanders, 341 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 25 of 41. He had a solid game. So did Sawyer Robertson. I mean, 140 yards, of course, but then 2 touchdowns as well. Pretty accurate for the most part. I mean, half completions, half attempt of the attempts. Not very accurate, but he did play safe, and he did go for touchdowns. I really can't discredit him for that. And then the rushing game, I mean, Baylor, I mean, they did have a pretty solid game on there. Like, no turnovers happened. Just Colorado just had a lot more momentum, I guess, in that fourth quarter to tie up the game late and then win it in overtime. Then, of course, Baylor, the main guy, was Sawyer Robertson, the quarterback, who had 9 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown. Good God. Then Monterey Baldwin and Hal Presley both getting touchdowns. Hal getting 2 catches, 43 yards. Monterey, 3 catches, 36 yards. And also, I guess, why not, 2 catches and 30 yards for Keatron Jackson. Then Colorado's offense, Shedeur Sanders had a rushing touchdown. Michael Welch had 2 rushing touchdowns. Good grief. LaJohntay Wester had the Hail Mary touchdown. Travis Hunter looking elite as always. 7 catches, 130 yards. And Amari Miller also had 2 catches, 71 yards, and a score. Jimmy Horn with 4 catches of 40 yards as well. Good for him. As for defense, man, Baylor's defense got there 8 times and still lost. I mean, great game from Matt Jones, Keaton Thomas, Steve Litton. There was Carl Williams who had a sack, Garmin Randolph, Kyan Robots Day who had a sack as well. Like a couple pass deflections. Litton even had a forced fumble. It was just, defense did good. They just choked at the end. Other than that, Hail Mary and the overtime performance, they actually didn't even do that bad. I mean, of course, on defense, they only got to Robertson 1 time with Shane Cox getting the sack. Cameron Silman Craig had 13 tackles. Pretty solid game from him. Same with Nakai Hill Green. 4 pass deflections and a forced fumble by Travis Hunter. Yep, that man did it again. He sure did. Yeah, so the basic moral story was Colorado had to come back late. Baylor's defense folded when it mattered most, even though they played well all the rest of the game. And Colorado was able to pull it out in overtime with a little bit of magic and a little bit of a miracle from, up at the miracle offices from SEC Shorts. Very nice game from Colorado. Nice bounce back after a embarrassing loss against Nebraska. And speaking of Nebraska, they lost to Illinois. I mean, nobody would have expected that, would they? I mean, I would have picked Nebraska to win, but man, Illinois is back. Illinois is back to being relevant again and fighting the Illini. Looking strong. And finally, of course, we have the AP poll for week number 5. So, obviously, top 4 is Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama. I'm fine with that. Georgia and Bama are going to be playing in Tuscaloosa this coming Saturday. I'm really excited for that. It's going to be at 7:30 at night. That will be a good game for sure. Tennessee with a big win on College Game Day against Oklahoma moved them past Ole Miss. I'm actually fine with that. Ole Miss at 6, that's fine. Miami at 7, I'm actually fine with that. Oregon at 8, Penn State at 9, Utah rounding out the top 10. I think that's okay. Like, Utah, of course, moves up after beating Oklahoma State. Missouri drops down to 11 after keeping it close with Vanderbilt. I mean, of course. And then Michigan at number 12 after a big win over USC. That makes sense why they're ahead of them. And USC is ahead of LSU because USC beat LSU in a kickoff game. Louisville at 15 is interesting, but I'm actually fine with that. 16, Notre Dame makes zero sense. Why are they behind Clemson? Notre Dame had a worse loss than Clemson. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, who is no longer in the rankings now because they did lose to Buffalo. I figured they would lose eventually, the Huskies. I just didn't think it would be that early. Maybe it would be like right around the midpoint of the season, or at least like around the first couple weeks that the playoff rankings come out. But that's fine. Clemson should be ahead of Notre Dame, though. Iowa State at 18 is interesting. Illinois being ahead of Oklahoma State and Oklahoma is a criminal move by AP, whoever's voting this. How in the world are you going to put Illinois ahead of Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, aside from the fact that they are undefeated and Oklahoma State just lost to Utah by 2 and Oklahoma only lost to Tennessee by 10? Like, why? Like, Illinois shouldn't really be 19 right now. I would say Oklahoma State and Oklahoma is better than Illinois, but that's just me. BYU at 22, it makes sense. Kansas State at 23. I mean, I think they were a little bit generous on Kansas State after they lost to us by 30. By 30 points. Almost. I know it's 29, but still, it was right around 30. Then Texas A&M, of course, with 24. I think they should have stayed. They struggled against Bowling Green of all teams. And then Boise State, not sure why they were the group of 5 teams selected instead of UNLV, but UNLV had a bye week. Boise State blew out an FCS team. No complaints really much, but I mean, most of the top 25, I think it makes sense, but some question marks in there. That's why it's the AP poll, and the most important poll will be the college football playoff poll, which will come out in like a couple weeks. Well, anyways, that is going to do it for this episode of Grizzly Talks Football. If you enjoyed it, be sure you leave a like, hit the red subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss a single video. Seriously, there's a red button down there. Just click it. That's all you gotta do. What are you waiting for? Anyways, until next time, I will see you next episode. And man, I can't wait for that next episode for my reactions to week 3. See ya and peace.